Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. And before we get into the episode, I do have an announcement. And the announcement is that I have officially joined the Dedicated Tax Pro family for the tax season of 2026. And I am helping to prepare taxes. So if you are in the need to have someone to prepare your taxes, or if you know someone who has this need, please send them my way to be able to help them to prepare their taxes for the 2026 season. I am so excited to be able to help my community with this service. It's so important. We want to make sure that you get every single penny that you earned, right? That you deserve. So if you would like a free estimate, please send me an email at De La Cruz period dedicated tax pros at gmail.com. Again, I will include that email in the show notes and show description so you can get your free estimate. And also, there is a referral bonus. So if you refer a client to me, the firm will send you $50. So that's right. You can even earn $50 per client that you refer to the firm. Again, that is Dedicated Tax Pro. I am so excited to be able to serve you guys with this new service. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Now, enjoy the episode. Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and today I have Miss Valentina with us, and she is going to be sharing her journey of coming to the U.S. Welcome, Valentina. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. And yeah, so let's get started. Can you introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we can get started on your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Valentina Rivera, and I am also a fellow podcaster. I have a podcast called Doce, which um talks about explores the journeys of immigrants, Latino immigrants to the US. And it's called Doce because I am a Colombian immigrant and I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. And that was honestly the journey that has impacted my life the most, even until this day. And I for a long time, that was like a very lonely journey for me. And through talking with friends and through the platform and the podcast, I have found like, oh, wait, like immigration doesn't have to be lonely. And we can all talk about that shared struggle and shared success. So, yeah, that's what I do. And outside of that, I also have a full time job. I'm in marketing. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
I love that. I love that you said that the immigration doesn't have to feel lonely. And yes, as I've done this podcast now for coming 3 years, it's been yeah, it's been interesting to hear all the different stories, but also seeing like a lot of things that the immigrants have in common, even though they come from, different countries. But I
Yeah.
definitely want to get into your podcast a little bit later. We can talk about that, like why you started and things like that and how people can listen. And I love that our podcast, the concepts are very similar.
Yes.
Although I know that you interviews, from Latin America and I interview from all over. Is that one of the big differences, right?
Yes, and I will say, mine is also like I do English episodes and also Spanish episodes.
Nice.
So that's like like a small difference, but I think eventually, I mean, this is like a baby podcast, I have like 1 year in, like less than
Oh,
15 episodes. Yeah, I mean, like what you've done with your podcast is like I strive to do that.
oh,
So it's really cool to eventually would love to expand, but we start small right now.
oh, yeah, yeah, you have to start small, you have to start somewhere, episode number 1 and then 2, and then you just build from that, for sure. So, let's get into you said you moved to the US when you were 12. So, talk to us about what you remember living in Colombia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember everything. Like I know a lot of people that move here when they're like 6 years old. It's like, forgive me if I get a little geeky with science for a second, but
No,
like
go ahead.
our long-term memory really starts developing around like 5, 6 years
Yes.
old. Of course, when there's like very important moments in your lives, like for instance, in my sister's life, I was born when she was 3, and she remembers that. So,
Aw.
when there's, like, big moments in your life when you're young, you remember that. So I remember everything. I had a great childhood, I have to say, like, I lived I had a very privileged life, um, especially because my dad lived in the US and, like, we lived in Colombia, like, at the exchange, like, you did the math, like, you can just have, like, more money in that regard, and that allowed us to have, like, a great life, like, my mom, my sister, and I, but obviously that came at a cost, and the cost was, like,
Yeah.
not living with my dad, and that's something that it was just normal for me, and I was like, like, "This is my life," like, it wasn't anything that I really questioned, but obviously it impacted us, and we were always like, "When are we all gonna live together? Like, when are we gonna all live together?" And as far as I know, my dad, he decided to find work here because in Colombia, it was, like, really difficult for him and his field. So yeah, and that's the case for, like, a lot of people, and I think it has become a little bit of a norm in some ways that, like, one parent, for whatever reason, especially for work, comes to the US and sends money back,
Yeah.
and yeah, it divides families in ways that, like, you can never fully comprehend.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, like, it came at a cost as, like, you not living with your dad, and then your dad not living with his family, not being with
Yeah.
his wife, not being with his 2 girls, and so it's definitely a huge sacrifice that parents make to try to, better the life of their family, and so, um, the reason why you guys came was, decided to finally be together?
Yes and no. My sister, she's a few years older. She had a pregnancy at an early age, and for whatever reason, my grandma who also lived here, she thought it was best to like, oh, like let's move the whole family now to the US.
Mm.
And
Okay, okay.
I wasn't part of, like, those decisions, of course, because I was, like, 11, it's just
Yeah.
kinda like I was just told what to do and I did it,
Mhm.
and it's not something that I have ever really talked to my family because, it just, like, after so many years, it feels kinda pointless to
Mm.
point fingers and say, like, "Why did you do this?" You know? But I think knowing my grandma and, like, my family and even society, I feel like a big part of it was, like, maybe shame of, like,
Oh, could be, yeah.
in your family having, like, an early pregnancy,
Yeah.
or, and, like, society where we lived was very small and, like, maybe they wanted to shield her from, like, judgment and that
The
kind of.
gossip and everything, yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and it was somewhat common, because I went to an all-girls private school. When a girl you would find out that somebody got pregnant and then, like, all of a sudden they were out of the country. So it was kinda
Oh,
like a practice in some ways, like, almost like a template sometimes, and then years later, people would come back and they would have a kid, So, um, yeah,
that's interesting.
it's
That's so interesting.
yeah, it's really interesting to, like, put the puzzle together, like,
Yeah.
as an adult, because as a kid, you're just kinda like, you just go places, you don't ask
Yeah.
questions, and, like, now, like, as an adult, as a woman, you're like, "Oh, that's what they were doing," So, that's really the real reason to, I guess, give, my sister and, like, really the family, I guess, maybe shield from judgment.
Yeah.
No.
What the family felt was the best decision at the time,
Right.
and it's just like when hard circumstances or situations come up, it's like, okay, here are our options. Which one do we think is the best, And
Yeah.
at the time, that's just what your family felt was the best, there. So you guys moved to which state in
So,
US?
we originally moved to New York.
Okay.
My grandma lived in Washington Heights for, like, 40 plus years, surrounded by
Wow.
Dominicans, never
Yes.
learned English, which is, a sign of rebellion, I would say, it's like living
Oh.
in the US and, like, never learning English. I mean, like, she just never needed it, There's some pockets in the US, believe it or not, where people just they don't need to learn English for anything.
Miami is another one, like,
Yeah.
Hialeah and particularly that city is just Cubans. I lived there for a few months, and I didn't speak English because
Yeah.
there was no need.
I mean, there's something to be said about, like, how much, I mean, I think it's, like, rebellious in a way of, like, "Oh my god, yeah, you never learned English," but also it's like, "Okay, but, like, how many opportunities did you miss out on?"
Yep,
Because my
yep,
grandma
it's
didn't have a regular corporate job, you know?
yeah.
She did other stuff that, like, didn't require it, but had she been, like, corporate or, like, anything else, not knowing English would have been a detriment for her life.
Yeah, so tell us I completely understand what you mean, I wanna get into growing up in New York. So you came at the age of 12. That is a very pivotal, time frame for a young woman's life, and so moved from Colombia, now you're in New York. Tell us about how you adapted, cultural shock, like, how was it for you as a 12-year-old to move to New York City?
Yeah, so we moved to New York temporarily, like, the first 3 months that we were here, trying to get our feet, on the ground, and then, like, we moved to the suburbs in New Jersey.
Okay,
So I got here, and it was a predominantly white town, and that was, like, just massive culture shock. I could have never imagined what I was gonna face.
oh,
I had come to the US, like, during summertime, and got to Six
okay.
Flags and, like, Disney. So, like, I had seen, like, the gringos, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Like, I
yes.
knew what they looked like. We were always fascinated by the way, like, they spoke English. When you go into the bathroom, everybody was making a line, like, that's not the way it is in Colombia, just kinda like, free for all. So, we're like, "Oh, wait, they have, like, rules here of, like, organization," We always
Yeah.
found that so fascinating. But then when I started, middle school here, it was like, oh my god, I remember the first day my dad dropped me off. It was in the fall. I started a little later after, like, the first day of school, and I
Okay.
was, even thinking about that day, like, literally my heart is, like, pounding because I was
Oh,
so scared,
yeah.
and a lot of people didn't like, nobody really spoke Spanish, and I knew a little bit of English, but, like, not nearly enough to
Yeah,
communicate or, like, to really have any kind of conversation.
yeah.
So, I that just, like, made it almost impossible to make friends, impossible to understand class, like, the first few months were really, really tough. And I've always been, like, a very, like, social kind of person, so I became, like, this, like, really shy, quiet girl, and it's just kinda like, "Who is this person?" You know?
Yeah.
And I have to say, on top of that, I had scoliosis in middle school, and I would have to wear a brace, but I was, like, so embarrassed about it because, at 12, you're embarrassed about, like, everything,
And kids are cruel.
and kids are cruel, and I would wear it, and would always, like, hide it, and it was just, like I had, like, so many insecurities, my accent, my back brace, like, not making friends, like,
Yeah.
it was honestly a really hard time.
Oh, man. So, I mean, did you eventually, like, make any friends? Was there somebody that, like, helped you? How did you overcome, this tough time in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think, there was this girl who I became friends with. Her parents were Korean immigrants, and I think she was one of the people that, like, understood me because her parents were immigrants, even though they were Korean and it was a complete different culture. So, I'm even friends with her until this day, and sometimes we talk about it.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, we haven't always been the closest, but, like, now that I look back and I tell her, I'm like, "Dude, it makes so much sense, like, you were truly, like, the only person who understood me," because I think what was the hardest thing for me was that the American culture that I came into was a very, individualistic culture,
yeah.
because in Colombia, for example, I moved schools, and being the new girl in Colombia is like, you are the queen of the world, like, everybody wants
Oh,
to know your name. like, when there's, like, a break between classes, like, you get, like, a dedicated break time for, like, snacks, everybody's like, "Come with me. No, you come with me." They're, like, scheduling time with you, you know what I mean? So, people are very excited to get to know the new person, and it's
Wow.
just part of the culture, and so and even the teacher is like, "Okay, who's going to take today Valentina out for lunch?" You know? It's, like, so ingrained in,
Wow,
like,
yeah.
being, like, a good host and, like, that hospitality, and then here to the town where I moved, like, none of that was kinda, like, fostered even by the teachers, you know? It was
Yeah.
very much like, fend for yourselves, and, being the new kid is already, like, intimidating, but, like, being the new foreign kid
Oh, that's even worse. It's like
Yeah,
you don't know the language, and then when you do talk, it's with an accent. Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
bet.
I mean, the way I kinda, pushed through that difficult time was a lot of crying, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of crying, I kept a lot for myself, and I think that's one of the things that I try to share now and say, like, "Hey, don't do this alone," because in my family, at that time, there was, like, so much going on, like, my sister had a new baby,
Yeah.
her baby had some, like, health, concerns that, you know, had to be taken care of, so obviously, like, there was, like, a lot of big problems happening.
Hi, Heidi here. Thank you so much for listening and supporting my podcast, but most importantly, the mission. If you would like to further support this podcast, there are a few ways you can do that. You can sign up for the newsletter. You'll receive the episodes straight to your inbox every time they drop. The link is in the show notes and the show description. You can subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel. And lastly, you can donate money. That link is also in the show notes and show description. If you would like to sponsor an episode or promote your business on this show, send me an email at Heidi at HeidiDelacruz.com. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the episode.
And, like,
Mhm.
me not having friends, like, you know, in my brain, I was like, "In the scale of big problems, that's a small problem
Aw.
right now," you know? So, I
Yeah.
think I really minimized my struggle and tried to just figure it out on my own, and that just, like, made me a very, like, sad person.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
Oh.
I wish I had a, like, a better answer about how I pushed through that. I think I just dedicated myself to, like, being a good student because I have always find a lot of pride in being smart and getting good grades, and I think that I really just kinda focused on that, and
Yeah.
thankfully, like, I was able to, like, achieve those goals, but I had so much, like, nostalgia for the things that I was missing out in Colombia, and, like, my
Yeah.
peers and what they would do, and just missing that sense of, like, community and pride in your school that I didn't feel here, because private going from private to public is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so you were able to visit Colombia after moving. How many years after, do you remember?
Yeah, so, let's see, I moved here when I was 12 and I went back when I was almost 17, so 5 years later, I
Okay.
I went briefly for my grandmother's birthday. My mom really wanted to go. I think it was, like, her 70th, and so my mom got her mariachis, and, um, I remember it was a very quick trip, so I remember just wanting to spend more time there. I was like, "Oh my god," like, even just stepping in, it feels like a breath of fresh air. It was just like, "Oh my god," like, I'm home, like, I don't have to, I don't have to pretend to be I don't have to try so hard to
Oh.
be someone else, I don't know why.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's hard. I'm like I said earlier, like you moved at a very pivotal time in a woman's life at 12 years old, and it's a shock. It's a huge shock. I would even say traumatic, to be completely honest, because
Yeah,
it's like you're ripped from your home country, you're ripped from your culture, your language, and then you have to adapt to this system as a 12-year-old that you don't know. Your parents are adapting too, so it's like you don't even really have guidance from them to be able to adapt to this.
Yeah.
And not yeah, just not having someone to help you and things like that. And like, the way that you explain how new kids are treated in Colombia is the complete opposite of here. Complete opposite, it's like, and we've seen it on TV shows and movies, and it's like, "Oh, you're the new kid," like, you get picked on or made fun of and things like that, and then, like you said, a new kid, but from a foreign land, like, that's even worse, and it's like, "Why are they here?" "Oh, listen to how she talks," little things like that. And I've heard, like, when I have guests that come, at young age, that's usually their experience,
Okay.
and it reminds me, I there was this she wasn't an immigrant, but I remember, I think it was 7th or 8th grade, we had a new student in our class, and I got called down to the office, because they wanted me to show her around school. So, like, I gave her, like, a little tour of, like, where the gym was, the cafeteria, and where, like, our classes were held, and I thought that was very interesting that they did that because I don't know if it was done before, or if they just did this one-off, but I thought that that was interesting how they had, like, one person show around, the new kid, and, eventually she found her friends and things like that. And but I thought that was interesting that they did that because I was like, I don't know if this is the norm or if they're just doing this one-off thing, but
Yeah.
it was nice. So let's talk about your podcast. So why you started it. You said that you interview immigrants themselves. So yeah, tell us about that journey. Like, what made you start a podcast?
Yeah, so, I I think that the podcast has been, like, very healing for me in a lot of ways, and I wish that I didn't view my immigration story as, sad and as traumatic as I do, you know? Um, I think a big part of it was because I try to just keep it all in,
Mhm.
not make my parents feel sad, with, like, what I was feeling sad about, Like, I
Yeah.
didn't wanna be, like, a burden, and, like,
Aw.
now I understand that I wouldn't have been, And there was a lot of, like, subjects that, like, we just didn't talk as a family, and, I just I guess with the podcast, I want to just tell people, like, "You're not alone," and that doesn't, like, take away the struggle, but at least it makes you feel like, "Oh, it's okay to talk about this."
Yeah.
And I wish I had asked for more help from my parents, even, like, from professionals, like, earlier on. I think a big thing is that, at least in Latin America, like, mental health is not talked about enough.
No, it's
And
not.
I came to realize that I was depressed when I was in college because
Mhm.
I was, like, looking back and I was like, "Oh my god, like, I've been really sad for, like, a long time," and I was like, "Wait, that's literally called depression."
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
I was, like, in denial because I was like, "Depression is not something that happens to me," you know? Like, that happens to other people, it doesn't happen to me.
Wow.
So, with the podcast, I think it's been a lot of, going back to those moments, like my first and second episodes, I share, my story, like, in a lot more detail, and that was
Yeah.
really hard to do, like, sitting in front of the camera and, like, reliving those days that, like, still make my heart pound. That was really hard to do,
Yeah.
but, knowing that maybe a 12-year-old can find this and, like, find some sort of comfort, I think that's my biggest reason. I guess I just wanna be the resource I wish I had when I
Mhm.
was younger.
Yeah.
So, that's really the biggest, mission behind the podcast, and also, I've heard about so many, like, stories that literally make you be like, "People can do that." Like, I knew a guy who walked from um, South America. I don't wanna say a specific country, just for
Mhm.
the privacy, but he walked from South America all the way to the US by foot. Like, I met
Yeah.
this person, and it was like
Wow.
it makes you wonder, like, what makes people do all of that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
that's like
Yeah.
a month worth of, like, walking in, like, in very dangerous areas of the world, and
The most dangerous, immigration path in the world is the Darien Gap. We what's it called? When I went to Mexico earlier this year, we heard about I mean, I had heard about it, but as I was doing more research on it, for the article that I'm writing about my experience in Mexico, yeah, it is actually the most dangerous, immigrant path that people take. And it's not even just people in South America, like people from the other side of the world, like in Asia, India, and things like that, they will fly down to South America to then walk up all the way to the US. So there's a common misconception of people thinking that it's just people from Latin America that do it. No, there's people from the east side of the world that will come and take that dangerous path, which again I have that same curiosity, which is also one of the reasons why I ask people what led them to come to the US because it's usually a traumatic experience. Like, people don't just leave their country just to leave their country. Like,
exact
there's a huge reason why people make such a drastic, traumatic move in their life, And so, yeah, I'm sorry, I cut you off. You
No, 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 I mean, that's, like even now, I really wanna move to Miami or, like, even back to Colombia, and I'm like I think about it a lot because I'm like, "Okay, what's the best way to do this?" I'm like, "No, I'm gonna save this amount of money." I
Yeah,
really think it through, and I have, like I don't have kids, I don't have, like, a partner here, like, I am just, like I can just easily move, and I'm one person, and I'm
yeah,
thinking about this a lot, and I have the means, or saving up to the means, versus, like, people who move with their entire families, leave a whole life behind, like, if moving in normal circumstances takes a lot of thinking, think about, like yeah, like, it's huge reasons why people move, like,
yeah,
insecurity and all of that, and I am very lucky that that wasn't my situation, like,
yeah.
I'm able to go back to my country and, what what for me, like, what's been a struggle is calling a place home, and I
Mm,
think that a lot of immigrants and even, like, first generation, second generation people can relate to that because
yeah,
it's like, you leave young, you have this memory of this place, you have these traditions, this language, and then you moved here, and inevitably, you're gonna be infused with the culture here, with the language,
of
with the
course.
slang, and so you go back home, and people are like, "Ah, la gringa," but then you're
Yes.
here, and they're like,
Yep,
"Oh, no, you're not American?"
yep.
Like, I have honestly never called myself American, ever.
I was born
Um,
here and I don't. When people ask me like, "Oh, where are you from?" Dominican. That's
exa
what I always
exactly, it's like, so what makes you American? You know what I mean? Or, like
exactly,
and it's
yeah.
funny because people in South America, in Latin America especially, they don't like when gringos call themselves Americans because they're like, "Well, we're also Americans. We're from South America."
Yes.
You know what I
That's
mean?
what people don't understand, like, America is a whole continent, you got the North, you got
Yes,
Central America, and you got South
yes.
America, so it's like, we're all America. Like
Yeah, exactly, and, I think to tie it back to the podcast, I think that's another thing that, when you live in Colombia, you're not thinking about your race, you're not thinking about being, like, Latina, you know what I mean? Like, I came to learn about all of this when I moved here because, like, we are obsessed with labeling everything here in the United States.
I am so glad you said that because I am so tired of that conversation. Oh, so tired, and it's like, do people not realize that that's only a conversation in the United States? Like you said, like, because 'cause
Yeah,
we're so obsessed with labeling things and people, and it's like, just let people live. Just
yeah,
let them live. Okay, go on,
exactly.
sorry.
No, I mean, it's a great point of frustration, and it's so interesting when you come here. I remember filling out, for college, like, your race, and I was like, "Mom, like, I'm white, right? Like, I'm guessing. And then, that also brought up the conversation of like, well, actually, I'm mestiza, and like learning about that stuff that, in Colombian history class that's learned, but like here, obviously, I didn't.
Yeah.
And I think what is frustrating here is that people have some people have this very narrow idea of what a Latino is based on where they live, So in the west part of the country, uh, what a Latino is based on like what is a Mexican. And then like maybe in New York, what a Latino is based on being like Puerto Rican or Dominican, you know? So a lot of times people are like, "Oh, why do you eat spicy food?" And I'm just kind of like, "Oh my
Yes.
God, like you sound so ignorant and you have no
Yes.
idea." And
Preach, girl. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So with the podcast, I love to always ask people like, bring me back to like Peru. Like tell me what makes Peru special. Tell me about the traditions. Because like I don't know anything about Peru myself and I want
Yes.
to learn. And I think it's like in Latin America, we're so diverse and there's like so much richness in every single country. And like Dominicans eat rice and beans, and I do too. And guess what? Colombian rice and beans and Dominican rice and beans couldn't be any more different.
Yeah.
And so,
Like your guys' traditional is la bandeja paisa, right?
yeah, yeah.
So much meat goes on there and it's like so much. But then like ours is we call it la bandera, which is literally rice, red beans and then pollo guisado. Like, that's our
Mm,
tradition, yeah, so it's just like,
yeah.
yeah, you're right, like, it's the same, but then it's so different, and it tastes so good, whether it's the Dominican or the like, there's a Colombian restaurant, like, down close to where me and my husband live, and we go all the time because every single time we go, like, the food is so good, no matter what we try, like, it's just consistently good, and actually, we were thinking about that, I was like, "But it's been a while since we've been, so we gotta go."
Yeah, and so with the podcast, I'm like, there's so many nuances about Latinos, and it's at this point, it's just laughable that people think that we all fit in this one box.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes about looks. Like I have cousins who are blonde and have blue eyes. Like Latinos literally come in all shapes and sizes. Uh like let's talk about Afro Latinos, how they've been like massively overlooked, and that's something that I'm also like learning about because like I am a white Latina, so it's just very interesting to have the opportunity to talk to people of so many different parts of Latin America and
Yeah.
to learn about them because that's really the beauty. I think that's the beauty of this country, being able to explore the world while living in a singular
Yes.
state.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true. I think about that, and I've talked about that with different guests too. It's just like, we have the whole world here
Yeah.
almost, and it's just like we can go get Mexican food or Colombian food or Puerto Rican food or Venezuelan food. Like literally, well, I'm in Central Florida, so obviously, literally in my backyard, I can go to different restaurants and go try these different foods. But it's like, what other country has that, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's other countries that are or cities and stuff, around the world that are very diverse, but, like, that's the marketing that they gave the United States, okay? It's like, to come and live the American dream, and this country was made up of immigrants, and it's just like, this is how you market it, and then now you're upset that people are coming and
Yeah, and
wanting that part of the American dream, so go ahead.
yeah, and it's like, what it's fascinating to me how sometimes you ask people like, "Oh, who was the immigrant?" I mean, I ask people, I'm like, "Oh, who was the immigrant in your family?" Because
Yeah. Oh,
no, like
okay.
because I'm like, "'Cause come on, somebody had to come here first?"
Ah,
And
I'm gonna start
sometimes
asking people that, like, "Who was the immigrant in your family? Was it your grandfather, your great-grandfather?"
yeah,
That's
and
smart.
people don't know, a lot of non-Latinos don't know the answer to that. They're like, "Wait, I actually don't know." And I'm like, "That is a fascinating story. How do you not know that?" Like people are, and I think that that distance from, like, understanding the struggle,
Yeah.
understanding what it takes to get here. Having that distance is what I think sometimes create that lack of empathy,
Yeah.
for immigrants now.
You just reminded me, we had a homework assignment in 5th grade for every student to ask their family where they came from. And
Oh.
so there was this one kid
Mhm.
who was like, "I don't know, we were just always here." And but the teacher was like, "No, you need to go ask to see where your family came from." So obviously I knew right away, like my parents came from the Dominican Republic, so I didn't need to ask. But a lot of them Europe and things like that. But, one kid, they were like, "No, I don't know." And the teacher was like, "Well, you didn't do the assignment correctly because everyone came from unless you're Native American, obviously,
Right.
But I don't think we had any Native American. No, we didn't have anybody who was Native American in the class. So it was like everybody here, he was like, should have been able to find out like where their family originated from. So that's yeah, I just remember that we had that assignment in 5th grade. So I'm gonna start asking people. That's such a good question. I'm gonna put that on threads. Like, do you know where was the immigrant in your family? Thank you for that. So tell me one thing that you've learned throughout your podcasting journey. So I know you have a baby podcast. You said that you've been a year in, but so far, what is one thing that you have learned in this journey?
Ooh, I feel like I've learned so much.
Yeah.
One thing that I've learned, I think I've learned to have better conversations just in general. I've learned to be more curious, in some ways, like, more risky, because
Yeah.
sometimes you have very polite podcast conversations, and then you listen back and you're like, "Oh, wait, we didn't really get anything out of that."
Oh,
But, risking, asking a question that may risk someone making them uncomfortable, I think sometimes pushes the conversation in wonderful and unexpected ways. Always, of course, keeping it respectful, and it always depends on who the guest is. But
yeah.
I think that's been one of the biggest learning results of the podcast. But gosh, there's been so many different
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
opportunities.
There really
As
has.
as
You
you know,
learn something new with each guest. It's
yes,
crazy. So
yeah.
yeah, I
You
love
would think
that.
that you're like, "After 5 episodes, I'm gonna have this on a flow," and you're like, "No, no."
Girl, I'm about to hit year 3 and I'm still learning. Like, no. Always I and that's a good thing too because I do feel like we should always be learning.
Mhm.
We should always be bettering our craft and things like that. So that's why I don't know how active you are on Threads, but I had wrote that like I don't see other podcasters or podcast consultants or coaches or whatever as competition
Mhm.
because I learn from them. So like if another podcaster is hosting a webinar or hosting whatever to teach, I'm there if I can be there. Why? Because I always learn at least one thing that I didn't know, and I'm always constantly trying to learn, trying to better this, how can I make how can I make sure that my guests are comfortable? How can I make sure that the story is told in a respectful manner, and
Mm.
things like that, and so I'm always constantly learning, and then I'm also constantly sharing what I learned. So, like, when you and I connected and I realized that your podcast was very similar to mine. I got so excited. Like, I was like, this is not, it didn't even cross my mind to think that it was like competition. Not at all. I was really excited to share my journey with you and share tips because our podcasts are so similar that I was like, my tips will help her because I'm doing something similar versus me putting a webinar out there, which I've done for different podcasts. And I'm like, okay, I can give this tip, but it may not work for everybody. Do you see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
it's everybody's podcast that I'm coaching right now or teaching right now is different. But for you, I was like, okay, no, I got this. Like this, so it was really cool that we were able to connect and that you had a similar podcast and I was able to share. Um, where can people listen to your podcast?
So we are available on all platforms. I think the biggest one is Spotify. I'm a big Spotify girly.
Me too.
Uh, but if Apple Podcast comes with a good offer at any point, we can talk.
Nice.
No, but we're available on all platforms, and I'm working on getting like YouTube ready and all of that. But I am a one person team, very, very slowly
Yes.
expanding. So it just takes a lot of time, and I also work a
Yes.
full-time job. So
Yep.
yeah, it takes also just patience on myself because I suffer of perfectionism or and so I'm like, I have to remember like it's not gonna be perfect. So we just have to put it out there.
And it's okay. Yes. No, I hear you. I'm a one woman show too. I started YouTube like a year and a half after doing the podcast, and it was because people were asking me, like, they were like, "Oh, this story would be so good." Like, it's powerful, but it's like we would like to see the person, right? And know who's
Yeah.
speaking. So I did market research, and the majority of my listeners said, yeah, that they wanted the video. So that's why I do it. So like it's audio only on, podcast platforms, but if they want to see it, it's on YouTube. But it is, like it's a whole different ball game, video
Yeah.
editing and everything. So definitely, take your time, be patient with yourself. And yeah, it's a whole different learning curve there too. And then the last question to wrap up this amazing conversation. Again, Valentina, thank you so much for sharing, for being vulnerable, for being, transparent. I know that earlier you made a comment about like I didn't have a good answer for that. And it's like I'm not looking for good answers. I'm looking for honest answers. Like, what is your experience?
Right.
Because you don't know how your story can impact someone else. And because you were honest and vulnerable, like, you could get that one message like, "Oh, thank you for sharing. I feel seen," which happens. Like I get messages and from, things like that. But what does the American dream mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. So I had actually never heard of the American dream until I moved here. So
Oh.
yeah, I like when people talk about the American dream, I was like, what? I didn't have like anything in my mind. And I think the new American dream for me is having a job that pays me in US dollars and being able to live in Colombia.
Hey, okay.
I think that's my new redefined version of the American dream because I miss my home so much. Like, the culture, the people, the food. Obviously, I'm so grateful for all the wonderful opportunities I have earned here because I have earned them. I've worked really hard for what I
Yeah,
have. And yeah, I think that with everything that's going on right now, especially, it's just I don't know, it feels a little scary here. I'm not gonna lie sometimes.
yeah,
And I'm lucky that I have like a defined status. But it's still it feels a little makes me feel a little uneasy and
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's
That
valid, completely valid.
yeah.
And I know with everything going on, like that last question feels a lot more heavier than what it
Mhm.
was when I first started this podcast.
Right.
Um, but as long as people are comfortable sharing, I'm gonna be comfortable, sharing their story. So as long as people are willing to share their immigration experience, I'm going to continue sharing it. And thank you so much. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
Um, like you said, the first two episodes, I listened to them, and you do go into a lot of details of your journey coming, and you mentioned that it was hard to do that, and so I'm very proud of you for doing that, and keep showing up, keep telling your story, um, wherever people are willing to listen, because it's an important short story to tell, and you can definitely impact and help, by sharing your story. So thank you for being here, Valentina. And yes, please go check out her podcast. I will include the show note, or sorry, I will include the links to your show in the show notes and show description so people can follow you and listen to your show. And thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you so much. And if I can just say, like, first of all, thank you so much for having me when we first connected. And I was not expecting to get an invitation. So I'm, so flattered because you have like a great array of guests.
Oh,
I also
thank
tune
you.
into your podcast, from time to time. And what you said about like, not seeing my like, not seeing other podcasts about as competition, I think that's something that I have, like, struggled with a little bit. And
Aw.
I, um even, like, I just saw this girl that I follow, she has a huge following, and she, like, released this podcast, and, and she has all, like, the tools and sponsors and all that, and, there was a moment for me that I was like, "Oh, of course," you know what I mean? Like, she has the beautiful studio and, like, all the
Yes.
connections, and so
Yes.
it's very easy to feel kinda, like, frustrated, but we are starting in different spots,
Yeah.
and it's, like, embracing the journey, and I'm so grateful that I found you through another guest that also has a podcast, and so it's really beautiful to feel embraced in that podcasting community, and thank you so much for creating that space.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Mommy Podcast.